we talked about this a little bit before, and the expectation based on our reach expert in the booth here is that Nassif will not be having a good time just because this deck is deadly, this deck is fast, this deck is it doesn't rely on just attacking like all the other is it variants we've seen so far. It has
Mhm.
that backdoor out. So
Yeah,
it,
really tough one. And it does look at the top of our standard or of our standings. This should be round
7, yep.
7 now, right? Correct? Yeah,
Yep.
okay. So we got 4 players that are at 6-0 as well. So one Rakdos and Dom. Then we have Casa at Creativity, Inos player, and an Omnath player. So really all the decks represented except that number 1 deck, Murktide. Which is kind of
Which is
impressive.
actually, I've come to appreciate when the rest of the format kind of just beats up on the top deck, and then kind of
Mhm.
like in Pioneer, how like mono green was like quote unquote the best deck forever and ever, and we just never saw it in the top 8 of the RC, and even in the PT, it didn't like really perform as well as some would hope. So
Totally agree. Yep.
good to
Wow,
see the takedown.
what a blowout here so far from Nassif. Getting that Solitude in to be able to deal with both Shredder and Ragavan there. Nice stuff. And the upkeep
Oh.
Blotto here. Wow, Nassif is like, oh, you think I'll be losing this? Hold my beverage. Because he just had the best possible start he could here. That was impressive.
Yeah, I mean he's really going Super Saiyan here, being really representing the Manatraders bounty system, no taking no prisoners. Which you know what, like you said
Hmm.
earlier, company man, very good.
Very much a company man. Yeah, 5-1 here already. And this one of the bigger matches, then puts himself in that situation where it is kind of winning in time. So great work from Nassif so far.
Yeah, and that's something to be conscious of as well. We are playing a 9-round tournament, and though we only have 210 players, or rather, sorry, we only have 210 players. The expectation is that we would be playing 8 rounds. However,
Hmm.
Swiss portion was listed as 9 rounds, so we will be playing the full 9 rounds out, which is for the audience at home. That's one extra match of Magic. Hope you enjoy for sure. But that means that we will likely see a good number of X2s also make the top 8 tomorrow, which starts at 4 p.m. EST. So this is going to be a very critical match for both players.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And everyone who is joining us here, first of all, thank you so much for being part of Mana Traders game. We appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate all our viewers here. And yeah, it's going to be better, but really fun day so far. And yeah, tomorrow gets even better, Anurag. Those single elimination days are what it's all about.
Yeah, that's just high intensity, high octane gameplay. I love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, looking at the hand here, we see Icewind Coatl, Wall of Omens for Nassif on the other side, Sacred Foundry, and Teferi Time Raveler for Mike. And I mean, while you do have a couple more cards in hand from the control side, I have to imagine Teferi being one of the most frightening threats in the deck, just by virtue of turning off any sort of uh, responsive elements, really
Yeah.
giving the green light to the Breach player to just win.
Yeah, absolutely. Teferi's excellent in this deck. It helps out with your Mox Ambers and stuff too. So big fan of this.
Okay. Solitude enters the red zone. Ragavan takes a trade here. Wall of Omens to follow up. And every time I see the Ragavan trade with any creature, I'm just going to be honest with you, I feel a little sad, as I feel like that Ragavan should never be getting any value at all because our deck is just set up so perfectly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ragavan would honestly be contemplating taking it out. Like
Hmm.
it really
Yeah.
is just not a great card. But
Yeah.
grinding station here, and now all of a sudden Mike is just one card away from being able to win.
And that is actually kind of absurd. Like to think about is
Yeah.
you got no cards in hand, you got a couple cards in graveyard, but you're still so much into it. So
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, Bob the Dog does have the counter to it, which there's not many that do it in this place, and that's the one Otawara can definitely do some work here and maybe interact with this combo, at least in some way.
now, admittedly, I have to imagine Otawara. Yeah, you'll get to like consume a little bit of mana, but then plenty of lands in play already to just recast the Underworld Breach and just continue the loop?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yep. Because I mean, you just have to like if you get Breach, you cast Emery from the yard. That will get you 4 more cards, and then you grind away the Mox and you mill out your whole deck. And then when it comes to Otawara, I guess you can bounce Breach at like the last minute. But if you bounce Breach in response to anything, they just do it again. So maybe Otawara actually doesn't do anything there, but if there is a way, I'm sure Nassif can plan ahead and make something work for it.
Yeah, very, very, very good points there. So, I mean, yeah, it's tricky because now I think we're gonna see, Nassif may have to like the Teferi means we're probably gonna have to pivot from being the same sit back, dirtle till I die deck, and then transform into some sort of like really combat effective workhorse that, or about as effective as we can get with our 1/1s.
Yeah, 100%. There's another thing, and yeah, not looking to hold up Otawara. So I think Nassif was doing the same check. Like if you draw it, you draw it, because Otawara was not going to actually stop anything. So if Breach is there, it's game.
Oh my God!
GG.
It wasn't close at
Had
all.
it the whole time. There you go. Here's the combo, and that's the difference between these other matchups that we've seen. I mean, it just really comes down to if there's a combo finish, these fair decks don't keep up with it as well compared to like if that was your Murktide. Yeah, sure. Nassif has 4 answers to that, But now as it stands, there we go. Get to grinding. Mox Amber goes away every single time, comes back, adds a blue. So you do this over and over, and eventually you cast that Thassa's Oracle from the graveyard. And that's all she wrote.
Yeah. And just
What a
demonstrate the
draw.
loop. It was ridiculous, right? Just like
Mhm.
I was thinking about this too. Is like, all right, well, maybe if like Nassif like top decks and Arcades, then he can present the reverse kill potential or something like that. But it's just this is why I love the deck, right? Like even in Legacy 2, I've got so many stories of like, I'm playing against Reanimator, they've thought seized and unmasked and griefed my hand, and not grief because it wasn't legal at the time, but you get what I'm saying. And then out of nowhere, with a couple cards in my graveyard, I have no right to win, and I top deck a 2-mana enchantment, no cards in hand, they're just dead. Like,
yeah,
that matters. I think in deck selection, like the win, that kind of like backdoor win percentage, and so.
Yep, I'm totally there with you. I am totally there with you. So we are just seeing the motions here, just comboing as much as you can while you figure out. I mean, we are in a Magic Online timed event. So, most of the things are like, Nassif knows what's going on. He knows the sideboard cards. And while this is all true, it is the fact that games are won by clocks. We just saw it. And this is a tournament where you're playing for a lot of money. You're playing for qualifications, all this stuff. So, making sure that you give yourself all the opportunities to win. Completely fine here.
And we have the luxury to also like watch Nassif as he's going through this. I can see him looking at some sideboard notes, contemplating using this time to, figure out more details. Anything that you need to think about, do it now so that you just optimize the whole process here. And we'll see. I mean, a Magic Online is kind of tricky too, because to go through the loop a couple times, there are a couple shortcuts that you can use to facilitate the whole process here. So you can see we're at the stage where we have 8 floating mana, and now we just need to rinse and repeat the loop here. 7 cards left in the deck, and
yeah, it's not super time consuming, but it is time consuming. It takes a solid 2-3 minutes. You got to get it going fast. It's not as bad as like copycat combo, something like that, but it is definitely bad.
Yeah,
makes
and
it
then
a little tougher to play online, and
we'll see. Okay, just buying back the Thassa's Oracle here. Trigger goes on the stack, and Devotion is actually 4. So even if you somehow get rid of the Thassa's Oracle or the Emery or the Teferi, things are still pretty good. All right, let's take a look at sideboards here going into this second game here. Corey, what are your favorite cards here? You know how to take down Breach because you basically built the deck. So what's the sauce?
Yeah, so Chalice is very bad against us. Dress Down's also very good. Bad isn't a good card, I should say. I should definitely
Okay,
specify
okay.
there. The Rest in Pieces are excellent. Endurance is good. Night of Autumn is good. Really, you can tell there's a lot of cards because this screams to me like a bad matchup. Maybe even you bring in EE, but probably not. But yeah, Dress Down, Rest in Peace, Chalice, maybe Veil, Night of Autumn, and Endurances are all very good, and time to take out some walls because they're not that important. That's what I would do against Breach, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense here. It's interesting that you say engineered explosives is not great. Could you like dive a little bit deeper into that? What makes that not like a heavy hitter here? Because in my mind, I'll just explain. Like I'm thinking, you just put it on two and you just sit on it forever. They can never cast their underworld breach. What actually happens?
Yeah, so it is like that, but there is wear tears and stuff. So whether they can't cast their breach anymore, they can cast stuff from their graveyard and have like a good value turn, or they could cast, wear or tear on it right away. Plus your opponent has to leave up mana all the time, and then you can start winning with like constructs and stuff. So it can be okay.
Okay.
But still not an all-star against us.
All right, so I have some cheat sheets here. I got some notes that I'll tell you. Looks like Nassif is cutting 2 copies of Ephemerate, 1 copy of Eternal Witness, 1 copy of Solitude, and is
Okay.
bringing in Engineered Explosives, the Endurances, 1 Chalice of the Void, a lot of the cards that you did mention, the Dress Down as well, and is shaving on Teferi potentially. There's still 4 cards or so that need to be removed based
Okay.
on his live input. So how do you? I think he's on the same page as you, all things considered. And then from the breach side of things, maybe you can tell me what are some tools that we should expect to see from Viking Mike.
Yeah, as far as that, let me double check this list to get the specifics here. Not have this loaded up, so give me 1 second.
Yep. You mentioned Wear Tear is a pretty critical card, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you can pull it up, that would be great.
Ah, there it is. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, so cards I want to bring in from here. Yeah, not a ton, to be honest. Like, I think you probably bring in some prismatic endings over wear tears to deal with EE. Like, that's another just great answer. You just prismatic ending it before you start comboing off. Cards you want to take out, Aether Spellbind not being great. You could trim on Grinding Station. You could take out these DRCs because that fair game plan is a lot worse. And then you could trim on Regavan. That's kind of the decision points. But you also got to think trimming on Regavan seems like the obvious thing since it doesn't look great. But then what if Nassif is trimming on all the anti Regavan stuff? So I like to just trim in these kind of matchups where I'm unsure, like take out 1 DRC, 1 Ragavan, 1 Lightning Bolt, that kind of stuff, and really get a better picture of the next game of what you want to do. But
Okay.
prismatic endings pretty much come in every single matchup here.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's pretty good to know. Looks like we're gonna see turn one Dragon's Rage Channeler. Nassif went first and played a land, fetching for Spar as headquarters, and then untapping. And you could probably guess what I'm about to say, but it's a turn two wall. So
Yes, it's always a turn two wall here, it would seem. Gotta love it.
okay, and there it is. Engineered Explosives is the draw off the wall to pair alongside Solitude, Arcades, and the Soul Herder as a 3 mana threat. And then on the other side, we see actually quite a lot of spells here: Aether Spellbomb, Emery, and then Prismatic Ending as well. And wow, okay, this is fascinating.
That is fascinating, but it actually is pretty good up against Nassif's hand, where you don't have any removal spells for that Soul Herder next turn. So if Soul Herder were to just be able to come down and blink the wall, that's not what you want to see. So actually, not bad.
All right. Dragon's Rage Channeler into the red zone. Wall of Omens. That's the top deck. Thoughtseize bug? Question mark.
Yeah, prismatic ending Thoughtseize bug. I suppose that works. It'll be interesting to see what we want to do here. If we just want a wall or get EE down. That's the thing about EE in this matchup is you can't really proactively play it on a number that, is really that great. So you really got to be reactive and figure it out. But, Emery diversifies as a hidden 3 drop. Your sagas are 0 drops. Most of your threats are 1 drops. You even have some 2 drops, which is your combo piece. We're just so diverse in the threats that it's never like a home run.
Yeah, and that certainly does make a lot of sense here. I think it's also one of those things where like when engineered explosives is in play and is visible to the opponent, that like, okay, I have to play around it because it's in play, it becomes a lot easier to mitigate the impact of that kind of card. Like you just don't play Underworld Breach into an EE on 2. You dig for specific cards and things like that. So I think I am slowly starting to learn based on your analysis what the downside is to something like EE.
Agreed, agreed. But there will be times when it looks insane. Somebody over sideboards towards a certain metric of your deck, and it's gonna look a lot better. But yeah, nice turn here with Spellbomb. Even if you're just gonna sacrifice it to draw a card and then buy it back with Emery, that's a perfectly reasonable turn. Didn't hit any of the good cards, Grinding Station or Bobble or Mox Amber, but still pretty good.
So this is an interesting turn because now we could actually just play engineered explosives on one and take care of two cards.
Yeah.
There still is an issue of the Emery buying back threats, but there is Solitude in the hand, and so Flood is trying the top deck as well. So now that you have a couple pieces in front of you, Corey, how would you navigate this turn from Nassif's side?
I think I would probably just go Soul Herder. You're so far away from getting comboed that I want to start getting some value going. But I could also see Arcades because one thing these combo breach decks don't do as well is kill that. Now, that being said, there is still Unholy Heat, and you have Land Enchantment, Instant Source. Yeah, so you are still Delirious. So depending on how many of those Mike took out, it might be a little risky play. So probably still Soul Herder to start, but I think it's defensible to EE for one here and then blow it up.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, um, the other issue too is with Aether Spellbomb literally in play here. Embry, recurring that sort of interaction might be another reason not to play the Arcadius. So I think I'm with you that Soul Herder seems pretty proactive. Seems like a really good way to get the engine going, and then you also get access to. You can still play your Solitude if you want to stop the Emery.
Yeah, might want to Soul Herder the wall and then at end step, if you don't draw anything else, just Solitude pitching Arcades with Emery because you got to kill Emery here. It's going to be pretty brutal, but and you do have Saga to deal with, which is also a problem.
Interesting interaction to Aether Spellbomb. If you wait for the untap, that gives the option to protect the Emery with the Aether Spellbomb, and that would be just simply disastrous, I think.
Yeah, agreed. That'd be pretty brutal. Even if you didn't recast it immediately, bouncing it and then just making a construct would be just a solid play.
Yeah. So yeah, you could definitely tell Nassif deep in the timer here. Inactivity time remaining is 3 minutes, so that tells you where his brain is at. He's just figuring out all the possible combinations and permutations. And honestly, you know what? I know, like, I've been in that situation before where I'll be like, oh, I want to make a play fast just to get the game going. But when it comes to tense situations, when it comes to win-and-ins and things like that, and I apologize. I may have mentioned earlier that Nassif was in a potential win-and-in, but he is currently sitting at 5-1, I believe. So um, it gets tricky, right? So looks like
Yeah,
he
probably
is
not
following
quite
through.
there yet, but yeah,
Yeah.
still has to win a couple more. But yeah, he doesn't get to be a Hall of Famer with 10 Pro Tour top eights without thinking out some plays. So
All right, so now we're in the end step. Is it worth it to pitch the Arcades to the strategy to the Solitude? And he says yes. Yes, it is.
yep, I sure think it is as well. Just gotta do it. Get it out of there.
Oh, and that does actually pump the Soul Herder up as well, because
Yep, it was exiled. Gotta love that. Soul Herder quite tricky in here. Aether Gust was a pick up here. Interesting. Not too great of a card. Not a card I would have expected to be brought in. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see how Mike sideboarded here.
yeah, Aether Gust. I mean, what are even the targets? I guess you could go for a
Like
wall. You could go for
Quaddle?
Arcades.
Like a Quaddle, I guess. But yeah, it does not seem amazing. Yeah, Endurance probably one of the bigger ones
Okay,
out of the
that
board.
might be the reason. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, not an amazing card.
All right, Nassif on the untap is now able to pick up an Ice Fang Coatl. Hand looking a little bit dry otherwise. Engineered explosives, the primary spell, but then also Odawara and Boseiju are castable too in certain situations where you would actually need them. But it's kind of interesting too. Like these they're not exactly dual face cards, but the fact that these legendary lands, have very real spell mode abilities makes me think of them as dual face cards or flip cards or whatever it might be that you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. The duality of these things is excellent and makes Nassif's hand go from looking pretty weak to actually pretty strong.
Yeah.
So we can lightning bolt here the soul herder at some point if need be. Probably wants to wait to wants to do it before this trigger goes on the stack to target wall.
Now, if we get to the end step, the trigger will immediately go on the stack here. So we
And it
have
will.
to play the lightning bolt in the second main phase to deny the card draw. And okay, yeah.
Yep. Doesn't want to do it, but now you're priced into pretty much doing it now. So I do not love this play by Mike. It's just going to be out of range anyways. So
Yeah, it's a forced play at this point. Yep.
yeah, you're just giving extra cards away unless you just really want to save it to bolt the face and try to win that way.
And even bouncing the Wall of Omens maybe with the Aether Gust to deny the Soul Herder trigger. Oh, okay. I guess we have the Aether Spellbomb. So the question then is, what are we saving the Lightning Bolt for? What do you think it might be?
Yeah, I guess just trying to go face, but yeah, nope, I don't know. That play was not didn't make too much sense to me.
Okay, well, Spellbomb going to not cycle rather, but it's going to sacrifice itself to bounce the Soul Herder and now make a construct that is a 1/1, will soon to become a 3/3 potentially. Steve's hand looks pretty good here though.
Oh yeah, definitely stocked. Now it looks great. Well, Mike's hand is pretty bad. I would imagine this probably favors going to a game 3, but that's the thing is Nassif's, a deck and hand is just usually pretty slow. So there's time to get your way out of this. There's time to play a bunch of constructs. Now that EE on 0 might be really good against the construct plan.
Yep. And the other thing to consider too is maybe you are right, actually saving the lightning bolt because we have a plan. The plan is to just go face, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this Coatl is looking pretty good. Or I mean, this DRC is looking pretty good, but the Coatl having an answer here built in is going to be pretty strong as well.
Okay. And this is tricky too because now I guess, yeah, I was going to say, you want to get mana here so you can hold up Aether Gust. Mox Hammer doesn't provide that just yet, so Springleaf Drum is the pickup here off of Urza's Saga, and are we dashing Ragavan? We are.
Just a cast, it looks like.
Oh, just a cast, okay.
Interesting. Gets on in there with DRC.
All right. Touching with Misty Rainforest, we've seen this before. Not trying to draw that snow-covered island, and surprise, it's everybody's favorite death-touching snake.
Just gonna trade straight away unless there is that bolt fired off. But yeah, another Coatl off the top, and yeah, things looking very grim for Mike here.
Yeah, you're stuck in a situation where you can't really use the lightning bolt because you know about Soul Herder. So it's interesting that Mike lets this resolve. It just signifies what they are forced to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's a really good draw too. Rest in peace off the top.
These sideboarded games definitely looking a lot better for Bob the Dog. A lot of hate there. And, sideboards really do speak a lot of words. Like if you have a lot of cards you bring in, you think you want to bring in a match, that's saying a lot that the matchup's probably bad. And, yeah, game 1, it looked pretty rough, even though Mike got lucky. And then games 2 and 3, it just looks excellent. A lot of hate. I'd be afraid to play against this much hate.
Yeah, I think also in part this is due to a couple things here, right? The hyper aggressive, all in on Dragon's Rage channeler strategy that we've seen from the grinding station side doesn't particularly seem to be the move, and that makes me wonder, like, going back to game 3, would you reevaluate? Would you focus more on the combo rather than the creatures? Like, what's your stance on this based on game 2?
Well, I'd for sure get Aether Gust out of my deck. I think Mike's going to realize that that was not exactly the ideal card. And yeah, I'd be focusing more on artifact enchantment hate. Wear Tear is probably coming in for me. Be able to deal with Rest in Peace right away, deal with EE in some regard. Um, yeah, but then just still trying to stay aggressive. Game 1, or I mean, when you're on the play, Ragavan, I think all of them should be back in. Big difference between play and draw with fighting through walls and stuff. So I'd probably keep that in. Max out on Urza's Saga just in case they side any of those out. Sometimes I trim on those on the draw and kind of focus on that game plan.
All right. So, and this is it, right? Like, it just gets worse and worse and worse. We still know about the Soul Herder, so the Lightning Bolt is kind of taxed. Prismatic Ending is there as well in case it needs to get rid of any sort of threat. Beseju, Odawara. Yeah, we got layers and layers of defenses here. Once again,
Oh, yeah.
Bob the Dog just showing how it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is really interesting. I'm noticing that this version of this deck just doesn't play expressive iteration from Mike. I was like, God, expressive would be great, but looking at the list, they're just not in there. Guess you got to cut something for all these creatures, but wow, does it feel rough to not be playing that powerful card?
Ooh, and I like this now. Look at this. This is the maximum punish here. So Soul Herder is targeting something like the Wall of Omens or the Icewind Coatl. This is where Mike sees the opportunity to lightning bolt a Soul Herder to kill it. And Nassif is like, nope, just gonna Odawara, protect it, bounce it to my hand, and still draw a card here. So this is one critical interaction. Just remember, on the second main phase is when you need to lightning bolt something like.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just giving to see free cards, and you don't want to be giving a Hall of Famer anything for free here.
Yeah. All right, Soul Herder back into play now. And going to the end step, it targets Wall of Omens.
More value, more value.
More value, more counters, cards, more this, more that. Honestly, I was before the lightning bolt went after the Soul Herder. I did see a world where we just keep the bolt in our hand and hope to draw another one and swing in for lethal with 2 bolts in our hands. Nassif is at 6, but now I think the game state has changed sufficiently enough where I'm not really sure what the best way is out of this board state. Maybe you can provide some clarity on that.
Yeah, it doesn't just doesn't seem like it's possible at this point. Deceive has too much value. You have to top deck like Prismatic Ending immediately for 1 Rest in Peace, then play Emery, something like that. But there's just too much here. We're gonna be going to game 3.
Yeah, and Dress Down is also another good piece of insurance here against something like Thassa's Oracle. So, what is fascinating to me is Nassif has only put 1 Rest in Peace into play. Shouldn't both be in play?
I guess playing around engineered explosives to invite if Mike were to have that, but yeah, I think that's the only thing. And honestly, if you get one of your Rest in Peace dealt with, there has to be like a build up turn once again from this Jeskai Breach style deck. So it's really tough to combo that very next turn. You got to have some graveyard presence.
Okay. Very high probability that Nassif gets to untap. That makes total sense here. Now, I'm thinking to myself, that just means something like Wear Tear sounds even more insane. Okay, so we see Wear Tear was brought in.
Yep, absolutely. So there's the tear. There's something to mill. And yeah, that hit some cards. You did have EE in Mike's board, but yeah, the next Rest in Peace is just going to clear out this battlefield again.
All right, Prismatic Ending going to take care of the Ledger Shredder. Rest in Peace now going to come into play. Good sequencing here to deny the Connive trigger. And another Soul Herder. Things are about to get crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the value. And this is
It's
just
a
going through the motions, but
yeah. And the number of counters you get too increases exponentially. You're going to get 4 counters now this turn.
yeah, this ends up creating quite a quick clock with these soul herders. Yeah, I wonder, I would bet Nassif probably took out the Arcades and is just trying to win with Soul Herder and just control the game. Just be the control player and try to make sure no shenanigans can happen from Mike. Oh, never
Okay.
mind. Never
Maybe just
mind.
like
There it
left one
is.
in.
Yeah, easy. Why leave more than one when you can just have one? And there we go. That's going to be the end of this game, giving us a nice game 3 between these two players.
All right. Looking forward to that. Pop the Dog wins. All right. 1-1 heading into the final game of this match. Now, we've seen a lot of things here and there, a lot of cards that have been boarded in. Taking a look at deck lists first, we're going to start with the Jeskai Breach list. Now, you mentioned a couple cards. We saw Wear Tear, we saw Prismatic Ending. Remind me one more time how we should be boarding and maybe some notes about what we saw in game 2 for sideboards.
Yeah, it's tough because Aethergust is not a card I think we really want, but you do want those white cards. You know, you want those in a lot of matchups. Even Engineered Explosive can be pretty good. It's looked pretty decent against these wall decks and Rest in Peace. So, yeah, I want to be taking out. God, it's tough. It really is tough because you just want to trim on stuff. Like, I want to take out a Mox. I want to take out a Grinding Station. You know, I probably want to take out 1 or 2 DRCs, maybe an Unholy Heat. Like, I really just want to trim along the edges, maybe one Emery, but you don't want to take out too much of all of one thing. There's no one thing that's bad in this matchup. It's just you don't want to draw too many of one particular thing.
Have you ever watched LSV play like Vintage Cube?
I have a little bit, yeah.
Okay, very specifically, watching LSV play Storm in Vintage Cube is always a delight because he kind of just goes in, puts a blindfold on, and is like, you know what? I'm gonna just randomly stumble into the win, right? It'll just like draw a card here, draw a card there, maybe repeal a Mox here, and then finally it's just like, oh well, here's lethal. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
seems like that's the vibe that you're talking about here with the strategy of like, just keep all the pieces in some capacity, and eventually you will find it. Make sure you have the cards you need from your sideboard to survive.
100%, yeah. And I would take out the Lightning Bolt. Like, that's the one for sure card I would take out. Like, leaving some of the Unholy Heats if you want to be able to deal with stuff. But I would take out a lot of the removal as well, now that I'm thinking about it. You know, you don't want to have spot removal against Quaddles and stuff, at least not in huge amounts. So maybe take out some of that. Um, you know, maybe leaving 2 Unholy Heats. That should be enough. 2 Unholy Heats, 2 Teferis, and then 2 Prismatic Endings. I think I would like that more than leaving in a large amount of those things.
If we get a chance, I would love to talk about Nassif's deck because I am seeing some adaptations in his sideboard presence going from game 2 to game 3. Most notably, one card that is in the sideboard now, 2 cards that are in the sideboard now are Engineered Explosives and Chalice of the Void. Those cards are not being brought in for game 3.
A
Does
lot
that
worse on the
surprise you?
draw. They're a lot worse on the draw. Yeah, Chalice, slightly surprising because there is more 1-drops, but I think that is perfectly defensible as well because you do hit some of your own 1-drops. So Nassif putting a heavy equity on play draw ratios here, where just recognizing game 2 on the draw or game 3 on the draw, it's going to be a lot tougher.
Okay, yeah. And I also have to ask, how do you feel about something like Chalice on 0, for example?
It is not bad. It really is not bad shutting off Mox Ambers and stuff. That one is deal withable. And if you ever like chalicing on 0 and they're beating you down with Regavans and stuff, ends up being a lot more brutal. And speaking of Regavan here on the play, to be able to just, you know, get under all these 2-drops before they come into play, it's going to be really good stuff here for Mike.
Yeah, there's a window here where Mike might just be able to steal the game. On the other side, we see Dress Down, Night of Autumn, Wall of Omens, Ice Fang, no turn 1 removal spell. We do have a bunch of lands, so it's not over yet. But if we snowball, this is how it begins.
100%. And just an excellent turn here for Mike here. You're able to attack. You're able to play this Mox Amber, get a Surveil Trigger, discard Grinding Station, play Dragon Rage Channeler here, and have a treasure left over for a removal spell. Like, these are what the dreams are made of these decks, and these are just the explosivity that Breach can have. and just all of a sudden you just have the world at your fingertips here. And honestly, there's a chance we see that ephemerate. No, probably not. I was like, you could ephemerate your own thing, get a surveil trigger, but not worth it.
Yep. Well, there's just another one on top of the deck anyway, so no biggie here. And maybe we're able to stabilize now. Turn two, just slam something like a Wall of Omens, and then figure out the next turns afterwards. But Unholy Heat looking kind of scary as well.
Yeah, and Holy Heat looking decent. It's not online yet, but even Prismatic Ending to deal with the wall, get in a big chunk of 5. All of a sudden, here's the duality of these Jeskai combo breach decks. You can just attack. You can just attack and try to win the game that way.
It actually looks so promising too, right? Maybe use Prismatic Ending on a Wall of Omens, connect for more damage, get another
For sure.
treasure, and then steal something even. That would be backbreaking. Gabriel Nassif definitely does have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, I would definitely be Prismatic Ending if given the option, that's for sure.
And I guess another thing to think about too is there's also just top deck potential of finding Oops Underworld Breach like we did in game 1 and writing that to a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Breach is on the top, the game is just over.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
already here, and that's the oops stumble into the combo type thing. But Nassif's at that. Oh my god, what a draw! Nassif's
That's
at
really
that spot
good.
where it's just I cannot play around everything, and if you have this kind of insane draw, like there's not much you can do. And Teferi to be able to shut off all the ephemerate instant speed stuff, excellent against this Bant deck. Where I think, yeah, I'm slamming Teferi here.
All right, sacking the treasure to generate white mana. No other way to really do this. Tapping the Mox Amber as well. Now Mox Amber is really strong because you've got Ragavan, you've got Teferi. You can tap for all 3 colors. What are we doing with this Teferi? Are we bouncing the Wall of Omens, perhaps?
Absolutely. Bounce it, get it out of there. If you want to spend your whole turn replaying that, then Mike can just Prismatic Ending it then. Right now, Mike is playing this tempo aggressive deck. Wow. Okay, decides to do that and Prismatic Ending it instead. Gets pretty paid off drawing Saga there. But yeah, I probably would have just bounced it, but I think it's totally reasonable.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see now like what happens to Nassif's deck when Teferi is in play, because I don't think there's a really good way for him to answer it.
There really is not. There's some Prismatic Endings or whatever, but Teferi is excellent against Nassif's deck.
All right. X equals 1, converge equals 2. Goodbye, Wall of Omens.
Yep, start to get some mills. That is still not Delirious, which is actually pretty bad luck to not get that extra 3 damage in, or have Unholy Heat. So looking to hit something big here. Actually hit Wall of Blossom, but F6'd and didn't cast that spell.
Oh my goodness.
Oof.
All right. That doesn't even need it. You know, that's where we are right now. Just flexing.
Yeah, that was definitely a mistake. Just would have had one less treasure, but would have had an extra card in hand for Mike. And with that Prismatic Ending, that is pretty strong as a pickup, being able to deal with Ragavan plus play something like Quaddle or, yeah, Knight of Autumn to deal with Urza's Saga here. Now that will get blown up with Unholy Heat, more than likely. That will turn on Delirium as well. I'd like to see an upkeep on Holy Heat to fix your draws a little bit. But you would have, yeah, I mean, you definitely would have milled that one, you know, so that would have been an excellent Surveil Ragavan into the graveyard here instead of having to attack it in here. So a little bit of sloppy play from Mike.
All right. Knight of Autumn going to block the Ragavan. Get a little bit of extra value there. Passing the turn now. And 4 mana for the turn. We have Icefang Quaddle, Dress Down, Ephemerate, Prismatic Ending, and Soul Herder as options.
I feel like you have to deal with DRC or Shredder and then try to play Quaddle as a blocker. But, I mean, Bob's still, Nassif's still in this. Still has a
I
chance.
gotta wonder. I gotta wonder where the name Bob the Dog came from.
Yeah, no kidding. What is Bob the Dog? Nope, no idea. I don't really see how it matches with Gabriel Nassif or Yellow Hat or anything like that. But
Right? Somebody
well,
probably knows.
yeah, absolutely. We'll have to ask Nassif a little bit later.
All right, debating the options here. In this position, what would you do, Corey? Would you play the Ice Fang? Would you jam Soul Herder?
I think I would Prismatic Ending for 2 on Shredder and then play Quaddle. And try to do something there. Now, granted, that line with the perfect information, I would lose, but it's a risk. I think you have to try to do something here. I think the other play is with perfect information, Prismatic Ending the DRC, and then playing Quaddle, I guess, is the absolute best play you can make. But even that's pretty brutal. Yeah, a really tough spot here for Nassif.
Yeah, so it looks like we're debating maybe playing the. Okay, so it is Prismatic Ending. X equals 1. We're going to go after the Ledger Shredder here. And then
You
figure
pretty
out what to
much
do.
And you pretty much have to go land Quaddle here as a blocker, but you don't even have a basic. So maybe you just go tap land go. That would have been the only way that Nassif stays alive here. But with this sequence, you're able to unhold, unless we top deck Solitude. Nope. Now you're able to go to end step, Unholy Heat this, and then dash Ragavan for the win.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. As long as Mike sees it.
And it looks like it's certainly, yep, there it is. Ragavan,
There it
cast for the
is.
dash toss. Unholy Heat, Surveil, target the Ice Fang, into the red zone. That is a GG.
Absolutely. And impressive stuff there from Mike. Just had that like early start that these grinding station decks can produce. You know, some of the most incredible draws there. That turn one Ragavan with Mox, being able to then, you know, the next turn go Shredder into Mox, into DRC, and then have removal spells. You know, those kind of draws are just so incredible. Mixed with Teferi to be able to close out the door was impressive stuff from Mike.